Okay, so picture this. Right now, there's a dog lying on a couch somewhere, just staring completely blankly at the wall. And if you asked its owner what it's thinking about, they'd probably just laugh and say, oh, absolutely nothing. Or maybe food, or squirrels. But what if that assumption is entirely wrong? What if behind those eyes, there's actually someone looking back? What if that dog knows on some fundamental, deep level that it actually exists? This brings us to a question that honestly should keep you up at night. Are we alone in our own heads? Like, what if you are the absolute only kind of creature in the entire universe that actually knows it's alive? Today, in this explainer, we're totally tearing down the wall between human and animal consciousness to find out if the lights are actually on inside the animal mind. All right, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap. We'll start with the famous mirror test, then look at redefining animal self-awareness, uncover animal metacognition, explore the mystery of experience, and finally, wrap up with emotion, ethics, and empathy. First up, Section 1, the famous mirror test, measuring self-awareness. Let's start right at the beginning of modern scientific testing. Back in 1970, a psychologist named Gordon Gallup Jr. came up with what essentially became the undisputed gold standard for testing self-awareness in animals. It's elegantly simple, and here's exactly how it works. Step 1, you anesthetize an animal so it's completely unconscious. Step 2, you apply a small, visible mark to its body, like a dot of paint on its forehead or a sticker on its ear, basically somewhere it absolutely cannot see just by looking down. Step 3, you wake the animal up and place it in front of a mirror. And Step 4, you just observe. Now, most animals see the reflection, think it's a rival, bark at it, posture, and eventually they just walk away. They never realize the animal they were threatening was actually themselves. But true self-awareness is proven when an animal looks in the mirror, sees the mark, and physically reaches up to touch its own body. And the results of this test are absolutely stunning. The animals that pass are, our closest relatives, right? Chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, gorillas. We also see dolphins, orcas, and elephants pass. But get a load of this, the Eurasian magpie, a bird with a brain the literal size of your thumb, also passes. It knows what it looks like. Meanwhile, on the failing side, we've got dogs, cats, almost every other mammal on Earth, and brilliantly, human babies under 2 years old. They completely fail this test. Which leads us to Section 2, redefining animal self-awareness, the sensory problem. Now, what's really interesting about this is it forces us to ask a crucial question. Is the mirror test actually fair? A lot of scientists are now arguing that the mirror test might be fundamentally broken. We might literally be judging a fish by its ability to climb a tree. Think about our dog on the couch. Dogs live in a world built almost entirely on smell, not sight. As researcher Alexander Horowitz pointed out in a pretty groundbreaking 2017 study, asking a dog to recognize itself in a visual mirror is essentially like asking a human to identify themselves just by listening to a recording of their own heartbeat. It's just the wrong format. So Horowitz created an olfactory test, a scent mirror. She gave dogs their own urine, altered versions of their urine, and totally foreign urine. And the dogs spent significantly more time investigating the altered version of their own scent. They realized that something about themselves had changed. By their own sensory rules, dogs know exactly who they are. Moving right along to Section 3, animal metacognition uncovered, thinking about thinking. So knowing who you are is slightly different from knowing that you are. For centuries, philosophers have debated the distinction between simply experiencing the world and actually knowing that you're experiencing it. And this brings us to a massive, game-changing concept called metacognition. This is defined as thinking about your own thinking, being aware of your own awareness. It's actually exactly what you're doing right now. You aren't just absorbing my words in this explainer, you can actively zoom out, observe yourself, and know that you are learning. The real question is, can animals do that? Can they actively evaluate their own minds? Well, the science increasingly says yes, and the examples are just wild. In 2007, researchers gave macaque monkeys a memory test where they could choose a hard question for a big reward or an easy question for a small reward. The monkeys consistently chose easier questions when they felt uncertain and harder ones when they felt confident. They were literally evaluating their own memory before acting. And it's not just monkeys. Rats actively opt out of tests they haven't studied for, preferring a small, guaranteed reward over a gamble. Pigeons report when their memory has failed them. Dolphins visibly hesitate before answering questions they're uncertain about. These animals are actively modeling their own internal states. They know when they know something, and they absolutely know when they don't. Section 4, the mystery of experience, beyond behavior. But here is where we run into a major scientific roadblock. Everything we've covered so far, the mirrors, the scent tests, the metacognition, it's all behavioral. We can observe what animals do, but science still struggles immensely to crack what they actually feel inside. Understanding that brings us to a deep philosophical concept called qualia. Qualia is the raw, subjective texture of an experience. It's the specific redness of the color red. It's the very particular, sharp pain of a paper cut. It is the feeling of being you right now. So the crucial point is, we have to ask, is there something it feels like to be a dog? Or is the dog just running biological software? Processing inputs and producing behavioral outputs with nobody actually home inside the mind. The philosopher Thomas Nagel highlighted this mystery brilliantly in his devastating 1974 paper titled, "What Is It Like to Be a Bat?" His argument was basically this: bats navigate via echolocation. They experience the physical world as this complex landscape of sound reflections. Because our human brains just aren't wired that way, that inner experience is entirely forever inaccessible to our imagination. No matter how much we study bat brains, we will literally never know what it actually feels like to be one. And if we can't cross that bridge, how can we be sure of any animal's inner life? Modern neuroscience, however, has a pretty powerful response to that. In 2012, top neuroscientists gathered and signed the Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness. Their massive conclusion: the neurological structures, the physical hardware, that produce consciousness in humans are not unique to us. Birds, mammals, and others have the exact same hardware in their brains. As the brilliant primatologist Frans de Waal pointed out, evolution doesn't just invent things from scratch. Consciousness likely evolved gradually on a spectrum, just like eyes and lungs. We aren't standing alone at the finish line. We are sharing the spectrum. The lights are almost certainly on. Let's move to section 5 and see how this all builds together. Emotion, ethics, and empathy. The wall comes down. Beyond the biology and the puzzles, there's one piece of behavioral evidence that is almost impossible to explain away as just biological software running, and that is profound emotion. 17 days. In 2018, an orca named Tahlequah gave birth to a calf that tragically died shortly after. For 17 straight days, Tahlequah carried the dead body of her calf on her head, balancing it as she swam across more than 1,000 miles of open ocean. Her pod even took turns helping her when she was totally exhausted. Scientists called it a tour of grief. I mean, there is zero evolutionary or survival advantage to carrying a dead weight for 2 weeks while starving. The only logical explanation is that she knew her calf was gone and she simply could not let go. She knew something existed and now didn't. And it goes even beyond their own grief. It extends to empathy for us. Consider Washoe, a chimpanzee who back in 1966 learned over 350 words in American Sign Language. One day, a researcher she hadn't seen in months returned. When Washoe saw the researcher, she noticed something was fundamentally wrong. Washoe looked at her, signed the word cry, and pointed at the researcher's eyes. Washoe wanted to know why her human friend was grieving. Whether or not Washoe fully grasped the complex philosophy of her own existence, this beautifully illustrates that she understood the existence and the pain of someone else, which leaves us staring at a massive, uncomfortable reality. Abilities we once thought were strictly, exclusively human, language, mourning, self-recognition, culture, they just keep turning up in the animal kingdom. The wall between us and them has honestly never been shorter. So I leave you with this. If animals truly do exist in a meaningful sense, if there's a vibrant inner life where they feel and grieve and actually know themselves, then is our treatment of them just an ethical debate? Or have we been getting it entirely wrong for all of human history, simply because we couldn't ask them? Think about that the next time you see a dog just staring at the wall.